Our proudest, greatest moment had gone horribly wrong. The mission had started so beautifully. A perfect launch, a perfect orbital entry, and we managed to gather more data about our bright blue home in the void than we had ever hoped. Launch, take some photos to use as basic satellite data, whip ourselves round our closest moon, then head back home. It was during the pre-set up phase for the moonshot where everything went wrong. Pressure warning spiked suddenly, blowing one of our thrusters off. Our command pod, or rather what was left of it, careened out of control some 200,000 clicks away from safety. We panicked and tried our best to stabilize the craft as best we could, and eventually we did. Our ordeal, however, had only just begun. Soon we faced more failures as we were forced to ditch damaged components to lighten up our trajectory and try to save what little fuel we had. 7 hours after we started, we realized there was no hope. There was no fuel left for a burn strong enough to get us home, and even if there was, the parachute hatches had failed, meaning even if we got back home, we would be incinerated or turned into a crater. I looked at my fellows in the command pod. I was so proud of them, of us. We had come so far. Lieutenant Lored, Lieutenant Bird, and Flight Lead Gruber, my fellow Otters, from digging burrows in the ground to flying in space. So, looks like this is it, huh? I looked at my friends with a half smile. Never thought I'd go out like this, Cap, but what a way to go. Bird looked back at me with a smile, his snout twitching with a mix of excitement and fear. I don't care what's out here. Look at it. It is so beautiful. Lieutenant Lored chirped, his long flattened tail betraying his demeanor as it slipped between his legs in fear. Yeah, it is glorious, mein Commandant. I fixed the gyro at least, so at least we can reorient for the trip home, Gruber said, as his claws tapped away at the keyboard. The radio crackled and sputtered at us. Oh, don't tell me the radio has failed now. I'm on it, Cap, Bird exclaimed, and snaked his way through the cockpit. Gruber moved away, his slender body and short legs giving plenty of space. As if he did not have enough problems, I will check the rest of the electronics. Same. Maybe I can see if our EVA airlock will hold. I can get outside and see if we can do repairs. Lored clutched his webbed feet at the door and carefully examined it. I got to work as well. Perhaps I can see how to stabilize the load between the thrust modules. The radio crackled loudly again. A voice erupted from it. It was in a strange language, or at least spoken very broken from our Ottish. There is a signal coming in, mein Commandant. It's not coming from home. Perhaps they're having difficulties communicating, and are trying to bounce the signal off a satellite. Try to see if you can redirect power from lighting to the radio. We will use our personals for now, I said, and grabbed us all a flashlight from the toolbox. Ha! There we go, Gruber chirped happily, as the crackling ceased. Hello, this is Aluka 13. Command, is that you? The radio remained silent for a moment. I hung my head in despair, my whiskers buzzing. Keep trying, I commanded. Hello there. May I talk to you about your car's extended warranty? Came a loud, blurted voice of distorted Ottish, followed by a strange chuckle. Hello, this is Franz Gruber. We are in need of assistance. Our radio equipment appears to be damaged. Can you please relay our signal back to Everton Air Force Base, yeah? A spark of hope. The crew immediately perked up. Let me think. No, the voice responded, followed by one of the most sadistic laughs I have ever heard. What's it? Hey, we need help. Hello? Hello? The radio crackled again and went silent. Oh, God. Another one of those crazies got access to a backwater radio signal again, I said, and hung my head low with disapproval. This is Everton. Everton to Aluka 13, do you copy? The desperate voices of ground control suddenly came through, and we immediately snapped to attention. Everton, this is Aluka 13, reading loud and clear. Keep it short, we seem to have radio issues, I barked back. The radio crackled a bit more, as if there was some nearby interference. Aluka 13, we have received... Francis of it. Trying to repair... Signal is strange. We... Going on out there. The message from home was garbled, barely coherent. In between the message I could hear laughing. We fiddled around some more. I can't take this. Something's out there. Maybe it's the antenna. I gotta go fix it, Laura said, and put his suit on. I'd hate to risk it, but what choice do we have? We will all go out, except for Franz. While we're out there, we can repair the parachute hatches, I said, and gave the pause signal for everyone to put their suits on. Sir, yes sir, came the universal reply from the crew. I waited for a moment after I put my suit on and secured it, then got the OK signal from everyone. Suits on. Depressurizing. Tanks are filling, no leaks. We got that going at least, I said, as I watched the green gauges on the oxygen tanks fill up. Depress complete, clear for Eva. No sound came from anything as the air around us vanished, replaced by the silence of space and our own breathing. A few moments passed as Lorette slipped out of the craft's airlock. A few tense moments followed. By the mother's milk, what the fluffing hell? Captain! Captain! Lorette nearly shattered our eardrums as his distorted, terrified screaming filled our radios. A happy, almost sadistically happy laugh came over our radios. I was wondering when you'd notice me. It's kind of obvious to be honest, but God, that was totally worth it. More laughter. Lorette frantically entered the craft again and scurried back inside, shutting the door behind him as fast as he could. He looked at me with terror in his eye as he screamed something at me from behind his mask, but his radio had turned off and we couldn't hear it. He looked straight at me, his sniffer frantically twitching as he was desperately wheezing out something from behind his helmet. I shook him and tapped my own radio beacon to remind him of the fact. He twitched and fumbled for a moment, then crawled around looking for his access switch. He found it. Oh boy, did he find it. Aliens! Came his loud, ear-shattering scream. It was at this moment the room suddenly went dark like an eclipse. We went dead silent, an eerie moment of calm overtaking us. It was then the cockpit was overcome by a shadow that moved from left to right. The shadow slowly blanketed us, like a giant shadowy being was enveloping us. And suddenly, the hulking mass of refined metals and telltale structure of a hangar's locking mechanism honed itself into view. Moments later, we were inside of a massive hangar. It would have fit our entire launch assembly inside it, easily. In front of us was an array of craft, the designs of which were oddly familiar, similar to our own, but significantly bulkier and very, very heavily armed. We could surmise, based on our own ship classification system, the approximate sizes and abilities of the craft we were looking at. This thing had 50 or more smaller fighter craft, 30 or so bomber craft, some ships that looked fit for mining operations, and in the back of the hangar we saw warships similar in design to one of our battleships, just casually suspended from the ceiling. We had no time to take in this sight, as the pod was gently grabbed by a mechanical manipulating arm, then slowly lowered to the floor. We could clearly see whatever was here was far in advance of anything we had. As we heard the thunk of metal, we took note of the guns, cannons and weapons mounted on fighters. I quickly ran a short plan from my head. An escape plan. Maybe if whatever was in here was hostile, we could steal a ship and make it home. Maybe do enough damage to drive it off. Reverse engineer so we could fight back. My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of our radio crackling back to life. Evident 13, do you copy? Desperate pleading from our radio. I was barely able to comprehend what I was seeing. I stuttered and stammered as I tried to understand what in the holy milk just happened. Ground control. This is Aluka. We have... We... Everton, we read you. What's the situation? The volume rose. Everton, this is Aluka 13. We have first contact. I repeat, first contact. I screamed in terror as the hangar door closed, locking us in. The pod thunked harshly as it was clamped onto and slowly lowered to the floor. A voice came over the radio. Hangar pressurization complete. Blast door secured. We clambered to our feet as we suddenly felt the pull of a gravitational force. Anything that wasn't stowed suddenly clunked to whatever direction was down, including us. We asserted a defensive posture as I held my men back at the entrance to the pod. We could hear clanking of some kind, as whatever owned this ship was now clawing at the pod's door. I waited for a moment, and waited. Nothing. I stopped hearing noises. Then, a knock. Wait, a knock? Hello in there. Anybody home? It said. The voice coming in over our radios and muffled from outside. Herr Commandant, what do we do? Franz asked me. I simply shook my head. Are you coming out voluntarily, or do I have to get a crowbar? Is that hatch broken or something? You're being very rude, you know, the voice said once again. I was half scared, half curious. I reached over to the hatchway and unlatched it. I took a very ginger step outside the door and saw the thing. It was 2.5 times our size, 6 feet tall with broad shoulders. A bipedal creature covered in heavy armor plating and fabric that created a sort of armored monk robe-like appearance. 2 terrifying front-facing eyes filled with a bright color of sparkling blue, just like the lakes of home, as if to mock us. 2 long arms with 5 fingers. It did not appear he had any claws, or anything, as his glass were smooth, unlike ours. It was standing at a respectable distance from the pod now that I had come out. I took a breath, and by the mother's milk was the air fresh. I felt my senses heighten, and my mind rush with thought as I took in a deep breath of some truly amazing oxygen. It was also scented. It smelled like I was in the midst of an evergreen forest after spring rain. I felt so relaxed. My jowls chattered curiously in response to the world around me. My crewmates, aware I was not screaming and not fighting anything, wandered outside one by one. I looked up at the strange creature, who was simply smiling at me, careful not to show teeth, tapping one foot while waiting for something. I held up a paw in salute. Hello? I said, gingerly. Hey, what's up? Figured you needed a hand, so yeah, he simply said. Well, his mouth moved, but the words he spoke were out of sync. He must have some kind of translation system. Thanks. We kinda needed it, I said, rubbing the back of my head, slightly embarrassed. Pah, nonsense. You had it handled. I figured I'd just, cut the middleman out, he replied, shuffling nervously. Always happy to cut out the middleman, I replied, half jokingly. We shared an awkward chuckle together before I finally noticed my radio was barking at me. Aluka 13, come in. Aluka 13, for God's sake, come in. Excuse me. I have to take this call, I said, and rumbled back into the pod to recover a handheld. Franz moved over to the side to marvel at the engineering arrayed in front of him. Lorette examined the creature standing in front of us more closely. Bird took a look at the pod itself to better find out what the hell even happened. "This is a Luca 13, go ahead," I said. I was out of breath at this point. I had nothing to say save what needed to be said. "Oh, thank the mother. Can you confirm you have first contact?" they asked. "What do you mean, can you confirm, exactly?" I asked, a bit bewildered. "Can you give us any definitive signs? We're in the dark here," came the reply. "Are you kidding me? This ship has to be at least a mile long. Have you tried looking out the window?" I yelled out into the radio. The radio went silent, and the creature behind me held his hand up to his mouth. Clearly he was enjoying the embarrassing show we had just put on. I leaned against the pod and tried to calm my headache with a paw to my temple. Aluka 13, this is Everton. Confirm first contact. It's very heavily armed," HQ said, trailing off. "So I noticed. Well, it's he, they, non-hostile. Seems friendly at least. I'm going to give this a shot," I said, putting the radio back. I approached the creature and stood to attention. I tapped my left foot, brought my paw up to my temple. "Captain Reginald Otters, Cassian Air Force, Space Corps, at your service. Welcome to Ilaria." He slammed his feet together, left arm down at his side, right hand up to his head. "Captain Lukasz Lokan, proud owner of this fine vessel, the Siren's Gaze. I am human. Mostly." "Mostly?" He removed a part of his robe on his right arm, showing extensive cybernetic augmentation. "Yeah, mostly. Look, I'm not a diplomat, I'm just a miner. I'm here to drill holes into rocks and make cash. I'm going to be frank with you, I'm not qualified to or even legally allowed to talk to you, but, you were in trouble, so I had to do something, you know? So if you don't mind, I'm going to get you guys back home and phone this into my bosses. Let the bigwigs handle this." "That is fair enough. First contact protocol must be quite strict in your world. If I may ask a few questions, though," I said, approaching him a bit closer. "Sure. I can answer a few things, but I have to ready the shuttle. Well, it's a big goddamn ore drill, but you get the idea. It can go into Atmo, so yeah." He shrugged and smiled. "Please go ahead. Can you also take the wreckage of the pod? We would much like to investigate the wreckage and find out what happened, plus the, debris outside, if that's not too much trouble," I asked, as politely as I could. I noticed when I twitched my whiskers he seemed to like it. "Oh, yeah, sure. Gonna need to load up and recover. Give me a sec." He moved his arm up and typed on a wearable computer. Bird and Franz watched with awed fascination as the giant mechanical arm moved things around inside the hangar. "So, my first question? So long as it isn't tech or security related, I can answer anything," he said, typing on his pad, seemingly manually controlling the arm. "Ah, are you on your own? Why am I seeing only you on this ship? Where's the rest of the crew?" I asked, perplexed. "Oh, well, you're not the first alien species we have encountered, and, well, my shipmates would scare the crap out of you, so they volunteered to stay out of this until we got a proper greeting," he said, pointing at the window in the hangar above us. The hairs on the back of my head rose in terror as the smiling faces of 3 other creatures stared dead into my soul. A strange creature with 8 legs, wearing some kind of engineer's cap. A large, muscular beast with a long snout and sharp teeth, with short, thick brown fur. A large serpentine-like lizard, using a series of mounted mechanical arms to wave at me. They waved at me with a smile, a friendly wave and smile to be sure, but I couldn't help feeling very intimidated. "Well, that's nice. You, make lots of very scary friends, huh?" I said, chuckling nervously. "Meh, Everyone's pretty chill, actually. Except for Boris, the big brown one. Word of advice, don't let him drink too much beer. Ursus, Olivakis, Sarapenti, you'll learn more about everyone eventually. Almost done. He smiled at me, and started to walk to the drill ship. A complex-looking mechanism lowered it to ground level, and a ramp appeared from it, so we could go in. Ah, I see. Sounds like a fun bunch to be around. Systems secure, Captain. Ready to disembark on your command. Relay has already been sent to headquarters, and a diplomatic frigate is on its way. A voice came from his radio unit, and it scared the shit out of me. He noticed my discomfort. Yeah, I know. The hissing takes some getting used to, but hell of a mahjong player. Anyway, come hither, kind sir. Thy chariot awaits. Got the pod and debris from the rest of your craft on board the cargo bay. I don't want to risk any contamination, so I'll put you in an isolated booth and secure myself in the cockpit. I'd recommend quarantining yourself when you get back too. You know, just in case. That is a very good point. I shall do so. What happens now? I said, and moved into the craft. Its passageways were incredibly spacious. I could do a dance with my wife in these hallways with how big they were. Wow. I knew where my priorities were, I suppose. Well, after I get you home, we're going to do a full decontamination thing. Make sure we don't get anyone sick. Then, after dropping the cargo off, and of course you, I'm going to head back up into space. Then my crew and I shall patrol the system until the real diplomats arrive. In the meantime, here. Just before we entered the ship, he handed me a computer drive of some kind. Oh? Well, thanks. What is it? I asked, as I gripped it. It was a bit heavy. Archives. Basic stuff. Histories, language database, technical schematics for translators and the programming to actually use them. Lots of stuff. Should keep you occupied until we can start going through official diplomatic channels. And, I included a little something in there. Don't tell anyone, he said, giving me a wink as he ushered me into our cabin. Mein Gott! Feel the leather on these seats. Franz was a happy boy, settling into his chair. Bird was far too occupied looking around at all the electronics around him. Sirens gaze, priority alert received. This is Captain Carl of the Sinner's Refuge. We are entering system in T-minus 10. A radio message spoke out. Copy that, Sinner's Refuge. We are currently in first contact procedures. Please maintain your distance and stay on standby. The CENTCOM has already been briefed, Lukash replied, and the thud told us that we had been released from clamps. Bird and Franz were beside themselves as the ship we were in glided effortlessly down the planet's surface, without even encountering air resistance. I couldn't wait to see home again. Lored was busy with a notepad, frantically writing down everything he could see, making observations about how the walls were built. As for me, well, I just couldn't wait to get home. Several months after this incident took place, we finally got in contact with the Terran Union. We were not yet allowed any real form of starship technology, with the humans setting up serious restrictions on uplifting policy. But they did get us much needed energy and resource tech, and in exchange for some local goods, Lukash, the human we first encountered, agreed to mine some much needed minerals for us. Humanity wanted us to reach for the stars under our own power, before they gave us anything real to work with. Within that time, the Terrans set up a dedicated ambassador operation by building a small outpost on our largest moon, and the taxi service needed to actually use it. 7 more human warships appeared in the system and acted as a defense fleet until we could get our own military force in place. That will be decades down the line, but it's good to know we have someone we can rely on long term. In any case, I have taken up enough of your time. See you in the void, friend.